One of our top courses that was created and had the most searches for it was people memorizing the various positions of the Kama Sutra. But and you can argue that that's the language of love for sure, but it's not precisely language as we define it.
How cool would it be if you could learn a foreign language in just minutes, so that you could go to a foreign country, say on holiday or vacation, and have a meaningful exchange with somebody in a foreign language, having only had, say, 30 minutes to prepare? Now, that might seem unlikely, and if you were to use old-fashioned ways of learning, then it probably would be. But there's an app called Memrise, and it's pretty incredible what they're doing.
So, if you can learn enough Spanish in 30 minutes with Memrise to ask me out, maybe we can give it a go.
I don't speak Spanish. How am I going to do that?
Here. Do you want to give it a go?
And this will definitely get me a date with you.
Yeah.
Stay tuned to see how he got on. We're now going to meet the CEO of Memrise, Steve Toy. Memrise has become the #2 edtech company in the world. It's generating tens of millions of dollars under his leadership, and it's helping people, maybe most importantly, truly learn a foreign language instead of just a bunch of words. I was reading on LinkedIn that Memrise is an award-winning language learning system with over 50 million users. That's a pretty big number, but what does Memrise mean to you?
Memrise believe that in actuality, the best way to acquire a language is to just go in country and survive. And the reason that is because you learn words, but then you're just immersed in hearing those words in context, at speed, with accents and truncations, and your brain is forced to try to decode those words. And then you need to use those words if you want a coffee or a beer or directions or anything else. And it is that hearing the words in context and using the words that is completely absent from traditional language learning apps and in many courses and classes in school and so on. And so we set about trying to help people not only learn or memorize the words of a new language, but then hear them in context and use them as quickly as possible. And that's been something that was very difficult to do until this explosion of AI technology has given us options that just didn't exist before.
So the time is up. Let me see how much you've learned. Are you ready?
Sí.
Muy bien. ¿Cómo estás?
Estoy bien. ¿Y tú?
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
De nada. Me gusta tu pelo.
Muchas gracias.
De nada.
¿Me quieres pedir algo más?
¿Puedes darme tu número de teléfono?
Sí. Well done. That was amazing.
Was it actually good?
Yeah, it was great.
Okay.
That was really good. So, when do you want to go?
Listen, let's go now.
We have been excited by all of the doors that technology kicked open, and we've been riding that wave to an ever better product that is more effective in helping you acquire a language.
I love it. Well, yeah, as a former languages teacher myself, part of the reason I kind of got out of teaching was it all felt a little bit too contrived. So you're teaching 11, 12, 13-year-olds to ask how to fill their car with petrol, right? There's not many 13-year-olds that I'm aware of, especially not in the UK, that needs to go anywhere and ask for petrol. So it all seemed a little bit artificial and not very helpful. It seems that now obviously the world has completely changed, and the options that people have for learning are so much more real. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say that, prior to the technology explosion that we're enjoying, when you're teaching kids or anybody, any group of people, a language, you're marching them to either a test
Hmm.
or some, say, video content that they can consume.
Yeah.
And you only have a small amount of those tests or that video content.
Yeah.
So you have to march everybody in lockstep and learn all the same words at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah.
And that's not, the reality of any group of individuals
Hmm.
that are trying to acquire a language.
Yeah.
So that structure has, tied everybody's hands and caused you to, ask about filling your car with petrol, or,
Mm.
the age-old joke with the biggest players out there. You're learning the red turtles on the blue sweater on the green chair. Like, who's ever going to use that? So it is inefficient, but it was all that we could do.
Mm. Yeah.
And now we can deconstruct the words of the dictionary of a language
Mm.
and build your own personal dictionary. And then in real time, with the 250 words that we
Mm.
can run you into YouTube and TikTok videos that are
Yeah.
made up of those words.
Huh.
And we can get you into large language models and prompt it in real time and constrain it by the words that you know.
Yeah.
And we can even constrain it by the words you know and the topics you want to talk about. Do you want to order a coffee? You can do that. Do you want to talk to your mother-in-law? You can do that, and so on. So that's what technology has given us the ability to break free of, the 13-year-old filling his car with petrol because you had to march everybody in lockstep to the same destination.
Yeah, I love this. I love this very, very much. Steve, we have a section called Elevator Pitch. It's a 20-second segment where you get to describe your company. Would you be up for that?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, well, if it goes wrong, it's all on me. You're number 6. You're interviewee number 6. I think we've done 5, and 4 of them have worked, and 1 of them failed dramatically. So we'll see which camp we fall into here. But you'll hear the elevator doors open. They're quite clear, and then you've got 20 seconds to describe Memrise to the listeners and watchers.
So my grandmother once told me that the best way to learn a language is between the sheets, because you're learning the words, but then you're listening to them and you're using them with the one you love or with at the time. And that's what Memrise gets you, the ability to learn, hear, and use the words so that you can have a better time in any country you go to.
I love it. I wasn't expecting between the sheets.
I wasn't either, but you threw it out there in the 20-second pitch.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So how long have you been a part of Memrise?
So a little bit before July of 21, but I became
made that
CEO in July of 21.
Got it. But Memrise has been going for quite some time before that.
Indeed, yeah.
So, do you know the backstory well?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The backstory comes from 3 friends who were all in Oxford together, generally in the neuroscience, psychology, arena.
Yeah.
And one of them, Ed Cook, was a actual memory champion and won the U.S. memory champion contest one year. Happened to be the year that Joshua Foer from New York Times was covering it, and Ed and Joshua struck up a conversation and relationship when Josh was just flabbergasted at the memory feats that Ed was doing and everybody was doing on stage.
Yeah.
And that led to Ed teaching Josh how to do it. And Josh won the following year and wrote the book Moonwalking with Einstein, which was a New York Times bestseller. And that kind of had the genesis and the seeds of the start of Memrise. And you can see it in the name, right? It was originally a way to memorize things, whether it's words of another language or birds of North America or flags of the world, is a way to memorize things.
Sure.
But eventually the company turned its attention to language.
Okay.
And as it had turned its attention to language and really got into that, the point of view of the best way to learn a language is not simply memorizing words, but you have to hear those words and use those words.
Yeah.
And that's how Memrise evolved into what it is today.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, these companies, big companies rarely start off the way they end, right? It's always, there's always
Well, there's a pivot somewhere.
yeah, I love it. All right, man. This is cool. So this next section's called it's called the deep dive. So I'll just do a little introductory jingle for that. What's the most important thing about Memrise to you?
I mean, the most important thing is trying to, in a disciplined way, take advantage of all that the world and languages and technology has to offer, and doing so in a way that makes sense to our users. And that's a hard prospect because we have such unbelievable capability, so many features we can add.
Mm-hmm.
Technology is leapfrogging itself, every 2 months.
Yeah.
And trying to keep and maintain that connectivity is difficult, but we are doing it by basing things on everybody's personal dictionary
Mm-hmm.
and their intent or desire for learning a language,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's to travel or talk to in-laws or talk to coworkers,
Yeah.
and their preferences. Do they like music videos, or do they like cooking videos, or do they like sports videos, and so on? And by staying disciplined and maintaining that for a user
Mm-hmm.
and running them into ever more intricate experiences when it comes to interacting with a new language or a language that you're trying to perfect,
Yeah.
is what is most important to me and to Memrise and to our users at this time.
I like it. So as I'm understanding this, you're letting the data guide you.
We're certainly letting the data guide us in terms of what features do we develop and what do we keep and what do we toss. If we develop a feature, nobody uses it, then we let it go. If we develop a feature and people use it eagerly, then we advance it and try to make it ever better. So from that standpoint, we do. We also try to make sure that we use the data of the words that people have learned with us to customize and morph the experiences that we run them into, right? Things like GPT are popping up, and they're incredible opportunities to actually practice language and conversations and so on. But prompting is tough, and prompting with your own personal hundreds or thousands of words that is a time-consuming thing. You'll spend more time prompting than practicing a language, and we're
100%.
trying to make that happen easily for our users.
I like it. You're clearly passionate about Memrise and what you guys do. How do you measure success for Memrise?
Well, Memrise's guiding principle is to help people acquire a language profitably. And when we say profitably, we mean to us, because we need profit and fuel to keep this machine, this flywheel going. And so when it comes to helping people acquire a language, our best metric or proxy for doing so is retention and engagement. How long do we keep people? How engaged do we keep people? Because no matter what your goal in learning a language, it takes time. So if you are spending the time, we are definitely helping you acquire a language to whatever end you desire.
And there's pleasure as well, right?
Yeah, there's absolute pleasure as well. I mean, in most cases, we find that people want to acquire a language for connecting to others, whether it is strangers as they travel and having a better travel experience, or whether it is people in their family. And you're a perfect example, right? You have a wife that comes from a family that speaks another language. So presumably you needed to learn Portuguese if you're going to connect with your in-laws.
Oh yeah.
So
no choice.
right. And so that's why people learn. And it's always an interesting thing. And you probably have a lot of experience in thinking about this as an internet marketer, right? when people first think about a language learning app, they're like, well, what do you want in a language learning app? I'm like, oh, well, I want good flashcards, I want some videos and so on. It's like, yeah, but why are you like, what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
What does a beautiful result look like? And it often is, well, I want to be able to have a great conversation with my mother-in-law at Christmas. Like, okay, great. And that kind of information
Yeah.
in the world that technology is, allowing for us today, allows us to direct you in that direction very much better than we could in the past.
I love it. This is cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, learning a language has just broadened my horizons and opened myself up to so many different ways of thinking and living. The first place I lived was outside of the UK, was France. And I was lucky in retrospect that the place I lived was very, very small. This was kind of pre-internet, so almost nobody spoke English. And I was totally immersed in that language. No one to fall back on to speak English with. And it was just the most amazing, rewarding experience. And if you guys can put that in some element of that into their phone and into someone's pocket, and they can have that, from maybe, I think of my kids, my kids are 10 and nearly 14, and they're doing these things on their phones now, and it's just such a cool thing.
It is incredible. And one of the challenges in running any kind of business like this is, how do you stay disciplined and focused and keep your eye on the prize when there's so many cool things that show up?
Yes.
Right? And it is easy to have a quickly scattered and buckshotted experience if you're just putting in the new bell and whistle. So you have to be disciplined and say, why are we doing this? To what end? And with more options, that becomes harder. Which means you have to be ever more disciplined and thoughtful.
I get it. So this might be you might perceive this as the same question, and if you do, we can move on, because you've answered the question really well. But maybe you'll see this as being different. How do you measure success for you?
For me personally?
Yeah.
Well, certainly, since I am the CEO of the company, it is getting the entire organization to set its sights on the same point on the horizon, which is helping people acquire a language profitably. Establishing the guardrails of how we're going to do it, which is our pedagogical principles of learn, immerse, communicate. Learn some words, hear those words, use those words, and the ways that we will interact with each other, which is summed up by the single word ownership. We need to all, demonstrate ownership in everything that we do, and then set them loose to accomplish the objective of helping people acquire language profitably, as measured by greater amount of users spending more time on task and more of them converting to billings. And if I can do that, and make sure that everybody has a good time along the way, then I've been successful in my job.
Nice, nice. What's a common misconception people have either about you or about Memrise?
Well, there's a common misconception about Memrise that is 100% understandable, because we started life as a way to memorize things, right? And we had a user-generated Anki-like, application where people could just put in whatever they wanted. In fact, quite honestly, one of our top courses that was created and had the most searches for it was people memorizing the various positions of the Kama Sutra. And you can argue that that's the language of love for sure, but it's not precisely language as we define it. But we were a very fancy and cool flashcard app, much like Duolingo, Babbel, Boost, Monly, Drops, Rosetta Stone, and so on. Now we are a company that has a way to memorize words, but then allow you to hear those words by wading into a sea of TikTok and YouTube videos that are filtered by the words you know, and then
Fascinating.
allow you to wade into a zillion conversations to practice using those words so that you can get in the game before you're standing in front of that barista in Madrid going,
I love
So
it.
that's the misconception, is that we're a flashcard app like the other guys,
Got it.
because we were. And we've made the turn now, and now we got to bring everybody along with us.
Yeah, but that's almost like the price, the cost of business, right? It's like you've got that backstory which helped you get where you are, and now it's a question, I guess, of re-educating people on what you've evolved into, right?
Exactly. And the mere fact that we are still trying to accomplish the same goal gives us that consistency and tether to the past. We're still trying to help people acquire a language.
Sure.
We have just been, bequeathed or granted the ability to do it in a different way, because the tech, explosion has given us just these gifts that allow us to do things we couldn't.
Yeah, and to give you credit, it's not like it's just happened to you. You've also leveraged it and made use of it, right? So credit where credit's due.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to think about, when a technology hits, how it gets used and what you do with it and how you think about it. That's always very important. And I learned that lesson because earlier in my career, I've led the target, by long, long distances. I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, I was working on interactive TV in the early 90s,
Okay.
right? The very things that, eventually 2 decades later are taken for granted, and it is Netflix and, all the other services. But we're working out in the early 90s. It definitely led the target. And so learning from those lessons, we're going to say, okay, great, we have this technology. How do we bend it to our particular use case and our particular goal, and use only what is useful and let the other stuff go?
I get it. So elephant in the room, I've written here. My kids, they use Duolingo. That's the one I'm familiar with, right? I'd heard the name Memrise, but it was only researching our conversation today that really, brought my knowledge up on the difference between you guys. Is Duolingo, despite its size, is it really a competitor?
So historically, absolutely 100%. Both Duolingo and Memrise help people learn the meaning of words. Hello means hola, hola means bonjour, bonjour means privet. We both did that. So we absolutely were competitors.
Yeah.
Duolingo did something incredibly well, way better than Memrise, is they gamified the whole process, right? And what that did is it kept people engaged.
Yeah.
Their retention and engagement numbers are off the charts. They are put in a different category than any other language learning app by Wall Street, because their retention and engagement numbers are closer to Candy Crush than they are to any of the other players. And so, tip of the hat to Louis von Ahn and Severin Hacker and everybody at Duolingo. They did an amazing job.
But there's a but, isn't there? I'm hearing a but.
There is a but that is manifest in all of the memes about Duolingo. The world is replete with folks who have a 2,000-day streak in French and land in Charles de Gaulle and can't get the cab to the center of town, right? Or they're having weird conversations with the waiter, and the waiter's like, hey, yeah, here's the English menu, right? And the reason for that is because they have kept up on the memorization side of things. They have a large dictionary. They know the French word for table and chair and everything else. But they haven't practiced hearing other people say it with its truncations and speed and accents, and exercising the muscle of decoding a sound into a word that you can then apply to your mental flashcard. nor have they practiced using those words. And that's the difference. And
Makes sense.
that's what we're able to do now. This is what we are doing now that the
Mm.
others are not.
No, I get your point completely. It makes a lot of sense to me. So I did the same thing anyone would do in researching this. The first word I typed into Google was Memrise. Then I put Memrise VS, so versus, and it came up with Memrise versus Duolingo. So I did my search and looked at the next 3, 4, 5 articles. They were all proposing that Memrise was a more advanced and better solution for language learning.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's credit to what you guys are doing.
Which is fantastic to hear, we're excited that that's the case. We do have, had some catching up to do in terms of name recognition, as you pointed out earlier.
Mhm.
And we do have a little catching up to do in terms of getting more and more people to completely understand our new value proposition and use that in their descriptions of us. If I were to say what the fantasy, value proposition that people start using out there is, they say, look, if you want to have a good habit that's not Candy Crush, that's somehow contributing to your mind, Duolingo is great. They've gamified the heck out of it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to France next month and you want to have a chance of asking for directions, ordering a beer, getting a train ticket, or checking into your hotel in French, there's only one choice, and that's Memrise.
That makes a lot of sense. So something that also came to my attention was that you guys were recognized by Time as one of the world's top ed tech companies.
Yeah, very exciting.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Would you be able to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, to the extent that I do understand it, but what Time Magazine did in conjunction with a company called Statistista is they gathered some objective public information about what all 250 companies, I'm sure there was more, are doing.
Yeah.
And it was mainly financial information and technological information. Who is on the forefront of using technology and moving the ed tech, product, forward. And as a result of whatever data they gathered, they don't make explicit what that data is, other than it's financial and technological. But they gathered that data, crunched the numbers, and our score came out as number 2 on the list, which was incredibly exciting to us.
Absolutely. So you were recognized by Time Magazine as the number 2 ed tech company in the world.
Yeah, I mean it was a fantastic thing, and there's often publications that contact you and say, hey, we're doing a list. That's not the case here. This was just they want to do an objective list with data. The way I found out about it is a friend of mine who I served on a board of directors for an adult literacy program, pinged me and said, hey, Steve, congratulations on the list. I'm like, what list? What are you talking about? It's like the ed tech list from Time. I'm like, what list? What are you talking about? It's like this one. You're number 2. I'm like, whoa. And that's how I found out about it.
Amazing. Moving from the company to you, where did you grow up? Was it New York, I think you said?
Yeah, New York City.
The city itself. And how did that shape who you are today?
I would say, for one, New York is gotta be the top melting pot of the world, at least in my experience thus far. And I've had the good fortune of traveling a lot of the world. And I think that that, coupled with the fact that I went through the New York City public school system, right? I was just in a giant melting pot, but had no idea about it, right?
It's normal, right?
Right, it's normal. I was just, this is what it's like. It just, you're just a kid growing up, and this is what it's like. And I think that more than anything else, had an incredibly positive, formative effect on me, and it even translates into the world language. I mean, in New York, you walk 10 minutes, through the streets of Manhattan, and if you're good enough, you will be able to hear 50 different languages in that 10 minutes.
Yeah, makes
Assuming you
sense.
can recognize them as you hear them.
Yeah,
It's just an incredible, immersive, diverse experience that I'm very grateful to have had.
yeah, I love it. What was the most significant turning point in your life?
Ooh, oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know that I have a true turning point, though I will say this. When I was in university, I went to a small school called Swarthmore College, and I was pretty certain that I wanted to make the world a better place by going into politics.
Ah,
And as a result of that, my first job out of college, I was a political lobbyist in Australia, of all places.
oh, okay.
Um, I got a couple years of really getting into it, and I met and spoke with the premiers of every state and territory, the prime minister multiple times
Wow.
because of the nature job. It really got me a good inside look at how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
And that fixed me on my desire to get into politics. So my next job was into the tech space, and I haven't looked back since. So
Good.
I think that's probably a good turning point. I was going down a political path and
Yeah.
made a hard turn after seeing how the sausage is
can
made.
understand that, but at least you figured it out, and it sounds like you figured it out quite young in life.
Yeah, certainly I was, very fortunate to get a deep enough, close enough look at how the machinery works
Yeah.
and realize this is probably not the best way to make an impact on the world in a positive way.
Yeah, well, you've certainly found your way since. What's something surprising you've learned about the people who learn with you?
About the people who learn a language with us?
Mhm.
I'll go with two things. The first one is it's somewhat surprising, how much, and these two things rhyme, but how much people want to learn a language
Mm,
for connecting with other human beings,
mm,
right? And when it all boils down to it, that's why I want to do it. When you see the lists of why people want to learn a language,
mm.
and then you go and you do lots and lots of user interviews and dig deep,
Yeah,
it's really connecting with others.
yeah.
And a rhyming, observation with that is that in this world that has got an explosion of multicultural content,
Mm,
right? BTS and Bad Bunny and music and Squid Games and Parasite and videos and so on. People want to learn a language in order to engage with that culture and immerse themselves in that culture, which to a degree is connecting with other humans. There's been
yeah.
an explosion in people learning Korean as a result of BTS and Blackpink and
Okay,
Parasite and Squid Games,
got
right?
it.
They, rather than have that content dubbed or subtitled
Hmm.
into a user's own language,
Yeah,
they'd rather learn Korean and
nice.
experience it in Korean. And that's surprising and gives the an interesting data point to all the people who say, why is anybody going to learn a language in the future? We're close to the Star Trek universal translator. Why would anybody learn a language? Well, it seems that connecting with others is still a key part of it.
I love that. So I mentioned before we started filming that I'm fluent in four languages, including English. And each time I've lived somewhere and immersed myself in that country and learned that language, I've learned how to think differently. Like when I speak French, I become the English French version of me. I think differently, I act differently, not dramatically differently, but differently. It's a
Yep.
different me. And it's a different tone of voice as well. So if I speak French, it's one tone of voice. If I speak German, it's another tone of voice. And my character changes, not dramatically, but it changes because you kind of become attuned with the country's way, the country's personality, if you like.
Mhm.
And I think what you alluded to there about there's software or there's tools that can do the translating for us, true, but they can't do the connecting for us.
Right. I agree with that. And you know, the sort of the mission or the vision statement of Memrise is to expand your mind to expand your world.
Love it.
Right? And you could, you know, just go with the Google Translate as you walk through, but you lose the experience of starting to see the world
Mhm.
in the same way that people who speak that language do, right? You have lived the shift. You
Mhm.
now know French people a little bit better
Mhm.
than you did before, and I dare
Yeah.
say the same thing happens in Portuguese and, you know, German and so
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And that connectivity, you know, speaks to, you know, the heart of the matter. This is why people want to learn another language. People want to connect in a world that seems like we're more divided than ever before. I don't
Yeah.
think any of us want that, right? And the, you know, learning other languages is a way to, you know, resist the, you know, the division that other technologies seem to be accelerating in us.
I love it. Yeah, it occurred to me when I was listening to you then, you one of the phrases that you used was you learn how to you learn a language and you learn how you see a language, I think you said. But I would add to that list that you also feel a language.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's an emotional connection for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, that's how we all connect with each other is
Mm.
emotionally.
Yeah.
And so you do need to feel in order to make that connection. And language is the access mechanism to our brains,
Mhm.
right? And so it allows us to connect. And that's why people want the language, not the subtitles.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So this is our final section that we call Love Hate. I'll just do a little introductory sound towards it.
I I love you.
So this is your choice, Steve. It's dealer's choice. What makes you angry, or what do you love about the language learning world, or broader speaking, the education world?
I think it's summed up best by give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him for life. I've been
Mm-hmm.
involved with adult literacy for 3 decades
Okay.
because it's the unlock for people to stand on their own. I love that you can give people the ability to stand on their own.
Love it. What's the best or worst advice you got about starting a business?
Oh, that's a good question. I really think the best advice has always been figure out what your customer wants, right? Keep asking your customer what they want
Yeah.
is crucial. And I do believe that there are times when there's a step change that is happening that requires you to be bold. As the old phrase goes, if Henry Ford asked the customer what they wanted, they would
Mhm.
say faster horses,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes there's a step change. But
Mm-hmm.
once that step change is made, you got to go back to the customer. And, you know, after cars are a concept, now we need to know they want a lot of cup holders.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you. So we talked in earlier on about leveraging data. How many conversations do you or your team have with the people who use Memrise?
Oh, almost every day, right? We are a rabid user testing organization.
Okay.
All the more so these days because we're doing so many new things.
Mm.
We got to find out, like, do you like this? Is this working for you? Do you understand this? If not, we
Mm.
got to change it. So we are talking to customers almost every day.
Wow. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. I wasn't certain because, I think the danger that we've also touched on when you're a tech company is to make every solution a tech problem.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
But it's easy to forget that humans are what drive the entire business.
Yeah, and the flip side of every problem is a tech problem is every new technology is a cool opportunity, but may not be useful to your customers.
Keep
Right?
your eyes.
There is a million objectively cool things out there that we could put into the product,
Yeah,
but I don't know that our customers
yeah,
want those things, at
yeah.
least when they're thinking about learning a language.
I'm with you. It makes a lot of sense. We're coming towards the end. What's the most difficult or rewarding part for you about running a business?
I think it's unsticking problems and getting a team of people to, succeed and win in the thing that they're trying to accomplish. I played a lot of sports growing up, and and most of them team sports.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very little that is as gratifying as working with a group of people to the same goal and succeeding together. It's really just a feeling that is hard to describe or replicate.
Spoken like a true leader. Two more things. What's your favorite quote?
Favorite quote, beyond give a man a fish, which
That was a
I
good one.
thought,
That was a good one.
I think it is a, fantastic quote. There is a much longer quote that I couldn't, give you verbatim, but from Teddy Roosevelt,
Mhm.
who talked about the man in the arena, right? There is just nothing, more important than being the person in the arena, whether you win or lose, right?
Mhm.
It is a more gratifying experience to be the person in the arena trying to win
Mhm.
than to be on the sidelines passing judgment on the man in the arena.
I wasn't familiar with that quote or paraphrase, but I like it. It's a good one.
Yeah, it is a very good one. It's worthwhile looking up. The Man in the Arena by Teddy Roosevelt. It's about a
Nice.
paragraph or so.
Final question. What question should I have asked you?
What question should you have asked me? Um, Perhaps, why Memrise? So my previous job, I ran a portfolio of 75 mobile apps, and prior to that, I created a mobile app that sold to EY. What is the allure to Memrise? How does that become the current point in the through line of the career? And it is the dovetailing of those things that I've talked about giving a man a fish, about my involvement in adult literacy for 30 years, about helping people accomplish a positive thing that is, just objectively good and makes the world a better place.
Nice. I love it. Well, you can see the light in your eyes when you give that answer. You can see that you've found something that fires you up, and you've clearly got a project that is touching a lot of people's lives in a positive way.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Well, you're kind of preaching to the choir here as a linguist, as someone who's learned, a huge passion for learning languages. It was the only thing I enjoyed when I was a kid. Like if it were not for language, I would not have gone to school. It was literally the only thing that got me through those doors was the fact that I could learn language. And this was pre-computers, pre-internet, and that all came later. But language really has just opened so many doors for me, figuratively and in real life. It's a hugely wonderful thing that you guys are making more accessible to millions of people. So it can only be a good thing.
Indeed, and there is a company full of polyglots over here that would echo your sentiment quite quickly.
I love it, man. How can people find you and Memrise?
Memrise.com is probably the easiest, or if you're going to either the Google Play or Apple Store, just type in Memrise and you'll find us pretty quickly. And as for me, in LinkedIn, I'm Stephen C. Toy, with Stephen with a V, and SC Toy in Twitter, X, or whatever you call it these days.
No worries, man. I'll put all those in the show notes. Thank you so much, Stephen. It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If you have an e-learning business, you're a leader of an e-learning business that you're looking to get to the next level, increase sales, that kind of thing, feel free to reach out. I'll put a link to my LinkedIn beneath this video, and you can get me there. Have a great day.